Good day, everybody. We're in Morsels of a Thought number 1909 with George J. Chanos' book, Millennial Samurai, Words and Wisdom Wednesday. We're on chapter 133. We're in chapter 133, 274, page 274, social media. Social media represents the first wave of the technological revolution, and it's already causing significant disruption. A study published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine found that social media use is linked to greater feelings of social isolation. Researchers discovered that the more time people spent on social media sites, the more socially isolated they perceived themselves to be. And perceived social isolation is one of the worst things for us, both mentally and physically. 75% of teenagers in America currently have profiles on social networking sites. While social networking undoubtedly plays an important role in broadening social connections, sexting, cyberbullying, internet addiction, and sleep deprivation can have devastating effects. The American Psychological Association defines bullying as aggressive behavior by an individual that causes discomfort to another. The Pew Research Center found that nearly 39% of teens on social networks have been cyberbullied. Trolling. The act of deliberately inflicting hatred, bigotry, racism, misogyny, and or just simple bickering between people, often anonymously, is also pervasive in social networking. Social networks. Sexting, the act of sending sexually revealing pictures or sexually explicit messages to another individual or group, is another common activity among teens using social media. A nationwide survey by the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy found that 20% of teens have participated in sexting. While teenage boys resort to sending sexually explicit or suggestive messages, teenage girls are more likely to send nude photos of themselves, mostly to their boyfriends. Beyond the personal trauma and humiliation that the unwanted disclosure of sexting may cause, there are legal ramifications as well. Some states consider such activities as misdemeanors, others treat sexting as a felony. Digital footprints create a permanent trail. This digital footprint can have serious repercussions in the future, both personally and professionally. A survey conducted by the Royal Society for Public Health asked 14 to 24-year-olds in the UK how social media platforms impacted their health and well being. The survey results found that Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram all led to increased feelings of depression, anxiety, poor body image, and loneliness. Another problem with social media is that modern teens are learning to do most of their communication while looking at a screen, not another person. As a species, quote, we are highly attuned to reading social cues, says Dr. Catherine Steiner Adair, a clinical psychologist and author of The Big Disconnect. There's no question kids are missing out on very critical social skills. Texting and online communicating puts everybody in a non-verbal, disabled context where body language, facial expression, and even the smallest kinds of vocal reactions are rendered invisible. She also notes part of a healthy self-esteem is knowing how to say what you think, and even when you're in disagreement with other people, or it sorry, and what part of a healthy self esteem is knowing how to say what you think and feel, even when you're in disagreement with other people or it feels emotionally risky. When a friendship is conducted, when friendship is conducted online and through texts, teens are doing this in a context stripped of many of the most personal and sometimes intimidating aspects of face to face communication. When you're texting, less is at stake. You don't hear or see the effect your words are having on the other person. And because the conversation isn't happening in real time, Each party can take more time to consider a response. If teens aren't getting enough practice relating to people face to face and in real time, many of them will grow up to be adults who are anxious about our primary means of communication, talking. This can cause social interactions and negotiations to become more difficult, especially as people get older and begin navigating personal and professional relationships and employment. Next page. Let's see. We are in chapter 143, social media, and the next page isn't flipping for me. There we are. Okay. The other big danger that comes from kids communicating more indirectly is that it has gotten easier to be cruel. Kids text all sorts of things that you would never contemplate saying to anyone's face, says Dr. Donna Wick, a clinical and developmental psychologist who runs the Mind to Mind Parent, which teaches reflective rather than reactive parenting. She says that this seems to be especially true, excuse me, she says that this seems to be especially true of girls who typically don't like to disagree with each other in real life. You hope to teach them that they can disagree without jeopardizing the relationship, but what social media is teaching them to do is disagree in ways that are more extreme and do jeopardize the relationship. It's exactly what you don't want to have happen, she says. Dr. Steiner Adair agrees that girls are particularly at risk. Girls are socialized more to compare themselves to other people, girls in particular to develop their identities, so it makes them more vulnerable to the downside of all this. She warns that a lack of she warns that a lack of solid self-esteem is often to blame. We forget that relational aggression comes from insecurity and feeling awful about yourself and wanting to put other people down so you feel better. When kids scroll, hello there, I see one person up there. When kids scroll through their feeds and see how great everyone seems to be doing, it only adds to the pressure. Social media also Social media also raises other profound social issues that may be far more consequential than we realize. Suicide rates for girls aged 15 to 19 are now the highest in 40 years. The country is currently experiencing the greatest political division in over 160 years. Both of these social phenomena have been fueled by the rise of social media. People are being influenced by what they see on social media, and some are being motivated to act. We, says Alexander Nix, NIX, CEO of Cambridge Analytica, says, we are a behavior change society. In 2016, Project Alamo, the digital arm of the Trump presidential campaign, worked with Cambridge Analytica to identify people in select geographic areas throughout the United States whose views could be influenced or manipulated. These groups were identified using information obtained from over 87 million Facebook users. Brittany Kaiser of Cambridge Analytica said, in 2018, data surpassed oil as the most valuable asset on Earth. These targeted groups came to be known as the Persuadables. Project Alamo spent over $1 million a day bombarding the Persuadables with highly targeted social media messaging, employing what Brittany Kaiser of Cambridge Analytica described as weapons-grade communication tactics. Project Alamo was instrumental in helping Trump win the 2016 U.S. presidential election. It should be noted that these tactics were not unique to the Trump campaign. Brittany Kaiser previously worked for the Obama campaign, and Cambridge Analytica used these same weapons grade communication tactics, end quote, in elections all over the world. None of us fully understand the implications of social media, but certain things are obvious. We know that the implications are significant, and we know that not all are good. On March 14th, 2019, a 28-year-old Australian citizen who had recently published an anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant manifesto on the internet committed multiple terror attacks in New Zealand that killed 49 and seriously injured 20. The shooter streamed the shooting on Facebook. It was also posted on YouTube and Twitter. Social media companies have generally erred on the state of protecting the First Amendment. In 2017, Mark Zuckerberg, describing Facebook's response to Russia's attempt to influence America's elections, said, "We don't check what people say before they say it, and frankly, I don't think society should want us to. Freedom means you don't have to ask for permission first, and by default, you can say what you want." He's right. We should generally hold the First Amendment inviolate, but certain incidents illustrate that we are now in uncharted waters. Russian hacking, increases in school shootings, increases in teen suicides, decisions like Citizens United, how we handle speech on college campuses, and the evolving nature of the media all raise important questions concerning whether we need to have an evolving or fixed view of the First Amendment. The prevailing wisdom, which I have always believed, is that the antidote for false or hateful speech is more truthful speech, and I still believe that's true. Or I want to believe it's true. But what if it's no longer true? If social media is a game changer, does that mean the rules of the game also need to change? What happens when we become surrounded by false and hateful speech? This is a real possibility when computers can now be used to create automated speech, and when individuals, corporations, and governments who are all interested in shaping public opinion gain access to this ominous new technology. What happens when outside actors whose sole mission is to undermine American democracy are using social media and the First Amendment to harm or divide us? We have already seen state actors use social media in an attempt to influence public opinion. We know that algorithms exist that can be used to disguise computer generated speech, such as an outpouring of authentic human opinion. We know that the human brain is extremely malleable, with more than 95% of information entering through our unconscious brain outside of our conscious awareness. We know that scientists and researchers are getting much closer to being able to hack the human brain. We know that we have an increasingly ignorant and easily distracted public that is highly susceptible to being misled. And we know that social media, a relatively recent phenomenon whose true impact is still unknown, will play an enormous role in shaping public opinion. These are all issues that we need to be discussing. Old rules and perceptions may no longer apply or serve us well, and we certainly shouldn't blithely assume that they will. America's greatest strength and greatest liability may simultaneously be spelled out in the First Amendment. The very idea that we might now have to view the First Amendment as anything but inviolate illustrates the depth of the water around us. Limiting the amount of time you spend on your computer provides a healthy counterpoint to our growing obsession with social media and technology. But we must do more than simply self-limit our access. We must try to understand the broad implications of this powerful new technology and use it to advance our collective objectives rather than sit back and watch as it is used by others to undermine our shared interests. Okay, so look me up on YouTube in Morsels of a Thought, Yin Yang, and I'm on Facebook currently as well as Ying Yang 753531, and on housecat.tracks. Let's see, yin and yang were separated by a dot, and the number and the words were separated by a dot. Anyway, so that's where we are at the moment. Okay, we'll talk to you later. This was Words and Wisdom Wednesday in California. Talk to you later. Old Kinderhook.